Awesome. Well, thanks for agreeing to have this conversation, because I just had a really strong impulse when I saw this advert that you have done recently for your upcoming event about food, and reading the list of the possibilities that you already had in the mix. And I was just like, man, this is a conversation that I can't miss, this opportunity to talk to you about this, because I just really want to hear more about, like, what is it about food that really is important to you? I guess that's a starting point. Like, what really turns you on about the food thing?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, to have me here, James. My name is Annika Korsten, and I recently put out an event which is happening tomorrow. It's a small gathering of people to come together and explore the transformation that is possible within oneself, to live beyond the supermarket and to live off the land. And why this is important to me is that probably for the last 15 years or so, I've been continuously being pulled towards learning more and more what it is that I can source from the land and not from the supermarket, and what it is that I can make myself, find somewhere, gather, barter, exchange, um, try some, like, taste something new that I haven't tasted before. So it goes into all different areas when it comes to that place. What I'm excited about. It's like I love tasting new fruits, new meats, new preserves of some sort that I haven't tasted before. I love learning different ways of preserving food, and also different ways of harvesting food, finding food, which goes into every area. Like, there's no limits to it. And so far it hasn't actually stopped to keep learning. Like, there seems to be like an ongoing quest of learning more, because I keep on meeting more people that do different things, and so my repertoire grows. So here in New Zealand we say there's a kite. I got this little kite, and I'm like putting things into like this little basket, um, to carry with me. And along the way, I've learned many things, and sometimes I pulled things out of the basket and threw them away because it's been a bit unnecessary, or I haven't eaten those things. So I, for example, don't bottle fruit and sugar anymore, because I don't eat sugar myself anymore for most of the part. Well, at least not processed sugars. And and some things I just wasn't interested anymore eating. Like, some things I that was in the conservatory for like years, and I didn't touch them. So I decided to throw them out or give them away. And also, for some things, it's a very time consuming. It doesn't really feel worth my time to go into it. So there's different aspects where I made my decision. So it's like a choosing what it is that I most want, and also food that is probably most nutrient dense in some ways. So many things that I do are referring to like nutrient dense or nutrient rich, or like very, like a wide palette of foods that I eat. So what interests me also is this aspect of feeding your gut biome all the different microorganisms that I can. And so the more variety I have, and the more different types of foods I eat, which have been preserved in different ways, then my gut obviously gets fed in different ways with that. Yeah.
I have this image of you talking about your kete, your bag of, I don't know if you've seen or read the Harry Potter books, but Hermione has this bag that she can pull like whole tents and like whole sort of these enormous objects out of this tiny little bag. It works for me, that image.
Yeah, it's happened a little bit like that, because I've been moving in the last 6 weeks, and what I was scared of was that I would not be stationary and have all my connections, because with the food, I resource a lot by weaving myself through the village and making the connections with the people that have surplus, and they have, like a local butcher that might have some organs and some fat and etc. etc. And so I had some fear starting to move, but I took my gear with me and I took some preserves with me, and then I ended up in different places, and somehow things kept on coming out of my car, like things that I would have bottled up, or we would stop somewhere, and then for the first time, for example, bottled meat and fish this time, and so I have these preserves where it's like cooked up meat and cooked up fish, and so I can, go around and pull that out of my car and then share this with people and exchange it. Or, yeah, I picked up like up in the far North Island, I picked up the sponge of bananas, which is now ripening 2 weeks later in the South Island. And so these things are kind of like moving their way, and I seem to still be eating mostly of not from the supermarket. Like most of the time, I've been picking up bits and pieces along the way, and I guess it's also like a choice of, like, there's one thing learning all these things and then stepping away from the supermarket, but it's also recognizing that life changes quite a bit in terms of what you're actually having on your plate. Like it's not like so much you're planning your meals anymore, like you might have done in the past, and you lay out your recipes for the week, and then you go and shop that in the supermarket, and then you have all this diversity. And
Mm.
I guess like the diversity for me comes from, every day I might find some different greens for the salad that I'm foraging, or I might have some fruits that I didn't have the day before that I mix with the meat that I'm frying up, or I'm opening another preserve from the winter that I'm adding. So there's all sorts of different aspects where it changes on a daily basis for me, but it's really random, and I just make it up. Like I don't plan so much. I just see what I have and then I cook with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on what you discover on the back of your shelf or whatever, that determines what your next meal might be. You,
Yeah.
you said something earlier. What was it? Yeah, you said that you're being pulled. Like you used the word pulled. You're being pulled into like the success of discoveries of ingredients or in foods and things like that. But what's pulling you? Like, what is that force that's pulling you forward?
Yeah, I wonder if it's pulling forward or pushing from the back. I'm
Yeah,
not sure where it comes. Maybe both,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think since I'm probably in my early 20s, I started woofing and working with people in gardens and putting my hands into the dirt, and like spending quite some time outside generally anyway when I was growing up. So there is a connection for me to nature and to the earth. And over the years, I've been like picking up different, like it was this interest of like, okay, like how can I do this? Like how can I actually live like from things that I know, like that where they come from, and also the taste, experience the tastes of it. So like I get this ecstasy of the taste. I get this excitement of like, wow, here's another piece of something that I haven't seen before, or another way of doing things. And so it's like bringing old um methods into now, like something it's been done like many thousand years possibly, into the now, and then also adding this like, okay, well, how does this fit into the context today, moving forward, and not being stuck in the past either, so it's like, how does it fit in the context of today to also utilize whatever is there, and also not, there's some things that have been cultivated or have been planted, and obviously they weren't there several thousand years ago, so what can I do with that now? Yeah. And I must say, if I this is diverting a bit from your question, but if I think about hunter gatherers, from what I understand is that they had very little sugar and very little fruits. It was very like a highlight, if they would find like a beehive at times and have a little bit of honey or so. And so the rest of their diet was very much plant based, or animals that they find along the way. And so, today I sometimes end up with this glut of plums or apples, and I have a tendency to start eating that, or I could eat lots because it's the season, but I notice it doesn't actually work for my body to have so much sugar in it. I pick it up immediately because I don't eat it so much, and
Mm.
I go a bit like crazy. And so these days I often just tend to like make apple cider vinegar out of the apples, for example, or bottle the plums, and then there's some plums as a dessert for winter, or also the plums can be made into vinegar or used as, preserving for tenderizing meat, things like that. So I change kind of, I use the cultivars, but I'm changing them for my purpose that I'm doing at the moment. And yeah, I just love, I mean, to go back to your question, I just love this creation part, and like having this pile of food and going, okay, well, what am I going to do with it today? It's a bit like an artist that has all these colors and starts painting the canvas. And so I get all these colors of these foods, all these tastes, and it's always different. There's always something different that gets added. So the taste is different all the time. And what I'm having available is different all the time as well. So it never gets boring, really. And yeah, sharing that with people is probably most exciting. Like I found in the last couple of months, I've been living with a lot of women, and sharing this love for the food, and everyone's been up for this experiment to not go to the supermarket if we can avoid it. And just like the excitement also seeing in other people go, oh wow, like you can make, of course they knew that you can make butter or something, but like then you make it and I go, wow, so this is how you make it. Like, so with all sorts of things, it's like, whoa, this is how it goes. And I didn't know. And oh, this is so easy. Or oh wow, like thank you. Yeah, or to take it on, and then I don't do it anymore. And then I kind of replace myself so that I can get on with other things. And yeah, that just this excitement that people have, that the connection that they're building with the food that they're then putting into their body, and also seeing the effects and the results in them, like when they start cutting out the foods that actually are not so good for their body. Yeah,
Mm.
I really enjoy that, like being by people's side to on that journey. Yeah.
How does it go with like you said earlier about fitting into modern life, and how does
Mhm.
it go, especially when you're introducing other people, like in terms of just the amount of time that it takes to prepare your own food? Is that, do people like kind of drag their heels, or are they excited about it, or how does that go?
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm pretty bold and say to people that takes a lot of time, like if you want to eat like this, then you got to put your time into it. It doesn't just happen by itself, and it does work easier in a team. So if you put yourself together with I mean, you can sit together and gossip with your woman around, or you could sit together and make sauerkraut and and sing the latest sauerkraut song. It's different ways of spending time, right? So I don't necessarily think that it's a waste of time to be doing it, especially with other people. There's people that bring in this challenge or this argument that they say, "Oh, but I could never do this. I'm working so much." And then I challenge people most of the time and say, "Well, if you weren't working for one day a week, that amount of money that you earn, that's probably replacing that time that you would then put into the food that you eat, and you would actually put some food into your body that your body enjoys, and not something that you get rushing after work to the supermarket to eat, or quickly cook."
And how has that gone when you've made that suggestion to people, or offered them that possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't followed up with people yet in terms of like how they're actually living their life now. I do know that like one friend of mine that I just traveled with, like she said, oh, she was like at some other place now, and then they went out to eat pizza, and she said, wow, I really am missing living and traveling with you, like to eat this clean food. Like I've eaten clean food the whole time basically, and somehow I noticed the difference in myself. So it is noticeable for people, and I'm not so sure. I think there needs to be, and this is something that I'm researching at the moment, there needs to be some form of transformation, or some kind of like, I guess, a different choice that needs to happen for someone to actually do that and then take a stand for that in their life and make it a priority. And so it's not just, oh yeah, I've learned a few things and then I do it. Like, and this is because for me it comes naturally, because I want to do that. It's like an artist, they paint art and it comes naturally,
Mm.
and art doesn't come naturally to me, so it would be quite a chore, and I would need to make this choice. Okay, I'm doing art now, so it is some a chemical transformational process for a person to choose to do something different for. And it's, and I think it's beyond themselves, you know. It's actually like, do you also take a stand for the earth that you're treading on, you know, and the resources that are getting used for the food to get onto your table. And many people, I guess, their life is quite insular, and maybe the view is not so on the bigger picture
Mm.
necessarily. And I think many people are also numb to the fact that maybe their bodies are suffering, and as much as their bodies are suffering, so is Gaia suffering out there. It's not anything different to what's happening inside or out. And I, yeah, my suspicion right now is that it would take quite like access to people's feelings to actually, you know, feel the pain of what has been happening to their body and what has been happening to the earth that they're living on, to make these drastic choices. And most of the
Mm.
time, from what I know, people make these choices when they're actually really physically ill, like when they've gotten to this, you know, rock bottom place where their body just gives them such clear signals. For many people, that's, for example, cancer. You know, when they then start changing their diet and notice that the other way is not working anymore. And I feel sad about that. I feel sad and scared that it needs to have that blow in someone's system to catalyze that change.
Yeah, what you're saying, really, like the what I'm getting from that is this the value of the experience. You know, the value and of the contrast between having a period of time eating, like say, clean food, and then going back to eating whatever pizza and more processed stuff, and that the gift of that contrast could really help someone to shift. That the absence is as powerful a messenger as the presence. You know, the presence of the
Mhm.
clean food.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm passionate about this topic, and I experienced this myself. Like, there was a time when I was eating sugar and I was drinking alcohol. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I just still did that, and eating also more fruit than I do now. And I developed candida, and I couldn't get rid of. I mean, I would have gotten rid of it probably with some chemical whatever stuff. But I tried it naturally and it didn't go away. And then a friend of mine who's a paleo coach, like eating like paleo diet, she suggested
Mhm.
to cut out all wheat. So that was also like, at that time I was still eating wheat. So cutting out all wheat, cutting out all alcohol, all sugars, and also fruit for that time. And within a week, my candida was gone. And this fog that I was experiencing, and this tiredness in my body, and these spikes in eating, like going up and down, and just really like having kind of sugar highs and lows, that completely disappeared. And I guess like at that point, you know, I started eating then of gluten-free, more gluten-free food, and some form of paleo diet, like eating coconut flours and all these kind of things that are nutrient dense. And then at times I would also try to go into ketosis, so like mainly eating fats and proteins. And now when I do that, because this is what my body is mostly in, I I get a direct feedback when, so this is what I said to you, when I eat some more fruit, like just fruits, in summer, when the fruits are ripe, I get a direct hit in my body. Or if I, even if I drink a little bit of kombucha, it's like I feel like dizzy afterwards, and it really doesn't help. Like, it doesn't. I mean, you know, like I had this like enjoyment then for the moment, but my physical body is not enjoying it. So most of the time, I avoid going there because for me, it's a message that it's not working for my body, and so I stay with the foods that are that my body can easily process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's so cool to hear someone talk about like this. Basically, like you're eating what you want, and but what you really want, what your body really wants,
Mm,
and you're listening to the signals of your body and using them as cues to help with the next meal or the next
yeah.
impulse.
And I do want to say that I'm not completely not eating. Like I do eat a bag of chips sometimes, and I do buy myself a bar of chocolate sometimes because there is this part in me that has this like just like just a little bit of that. So and I'm also drinking coffee sometimes. So like it's not like I'm completely like eating off the land. I don't want to put a false picture out there, like who I am or what I do. Like I'm still engaging with people in this modern world, and people offer me foods that I might normally not eat, and I still do. And so, it still happens. And for 80-90% of the time, I eat like that. And when you say like with these cues, what I find fascinating is when I forage my greens, I I walk around the land, and then there's some days where my body would go, kawa kawa today, or today I want parsley, and today I want this. And it's like, I don't know why, and I don't care because I just follow that impulse and get it. And I believe that my body somehow wants that mineral or that vitamin at that time. And I trust that with these greens, I cover that range of vitamins and minerals that my body needs. And in terms of eating habit, so I, for most of the time, fast and don't eat in the morning. And I also, if I can, don't eat after 6 and 7 o'clock. And what that means is that my body basically is just not caring about food for most of the, like basically during sleep, there's not much to process. And then in the morning, I just get on with life, I guess, and I'm not thinking about food. And what I noticed is in the past, I would have like food, like breakfast in the morning, and every 2 hours I'd go, okay, what's next? What's next? Open the fridge. Where's the snack? Where's next? And it would go all day long. And that was the past, and that was my life. I thought that was normal. And so now I can notice that when I'm then eating breakfast at 8 or 9 o'clock, 2 hours later, then my body, like all the way till 8 o'clock in the evening, every second hour, my body goes, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? And now I eat like at 12 or 1 o'clock, I eat this massive meal that has got heaps of proteins, heaps of fat, whatever I need, the minerals, some ferments. And
Mm.
then I eat a lighter meal in the evening, and then that's it. Like I might have like a piece of fruit during the day. So like I don't have to like put my attention, well, I am not putting my attention on it. Like it's just not what I need to do. Like it's my body is fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, even though you're putting a lot of emphasis on food in terms of you're putting time into preparing and you're sourcing different things and whatnot, but you're only really having 2 meals a day. And so
Yeah,
there's
and the
a
most effort I put in at lunchtime. So I cooked it. So it's most of my time is spent actually preparing the things that go into that meal. That are like whether I'm rendering fat or I'm uh cutting up an animal or collecting the greens, and even that doesn't take that much time. So I think in some ways, it's also an illusion to think that it takes so much time. It takes a lot of time for me because I make surplus and I give things away. So, if I start rendering fat, then I have more fat than I need for myself. So I
mm,
pass it on to other people, or
mm.
I exchange some goods. So yeah.
And it takes a while to make a 10-liter bucket of sauerkraut or something, but then a 10-liter bucket of sauerkraut lasts you for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, if you do it with people together, it doesn't take long. It's really straightforward. And you get gadgets that are easier to use for sauerkraut. You get these big I don't know what they're called. I forgot the name, but
Mandolin.
mandolin, yeah, and they're like massive, and you can put half a cabbage on this, and you just like go
Yeah.
for it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're really into it, if you like this your sauerkraut, and yeah. And I also like playing around with it, like with sauerkraut today. I used to put turmeric and uh, cumin seeds in. I really like. So today I tried peppercorn seeds because I know that turmeric and pepper go together. And so I don't know how this will be, but that's going to be too strong and spicy. So yeah, I end up trying different things. I might have different spices available to put in there. It's still fun. Like I'm still not getting bored by doing the same thing, just doing
Mm.
something different. Someone the other day, the butcheress that I was working with, she hasn't done it for me yet, and I'm quite intrigued because she said she wanted to smoke the fat for me so that I have smoked
Mm.
tallow. And I'm so excited about that, like to eat like fried potatoes and smoked tallow. Like that
Mm.
would be so cool, you know. It's like this, yeah. They do this stuff for restaurants, but you know, you can do this yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And where do you go? Like, do you have, if you were talking to somebody who was eating 100% out of the supermarket, do you
Mhm.
have like recommendations or ways for them to get started? Or like, if, I mean, I guess if they were talking to you, then they've already started somehow. They've already, you know, if they're talking to you about food, then they've already moved from the dead center. But do you suggest like for people to go like quite full on like you did for the start, or do you suggest small things, or what's your angle?
So I never went like hardcore ever, and it's almost like going cold turkey. And I don't think that helps. Like I've seen a lot of people that have decided I'm gonna do everything, and like you know, and they get totally overwhelmed. Like they plant way too many things in their garden, or they try everything out, and it's just this overwhelm. And so I always say to people, start with one thing and then learn how to do that well, and also see whether you will use it and whether it preserves, you know, like with the sauerkraut, these things can go off, or there might be mistakes that you make, you know, and you don't know why, but you might find out along the way. So it's really like start with one thing that you really like eating also, and make it yourself. And or it could be two things, you know, like so maybe this season you say, okay, I'm going to do sauerkraut, and I even plant my own cabbages. And so you know you follow the whole track, and I'm gonna play around with um some organs from the butcher to see how I can prepare them and that I like them differently, but I know they will be really good for my body. And then keep going, you know, whatever it is that you first get excited about. And I would not try to do everything at the same time, not at all.
Mm, mm.
It takes a
I
bit to
hear,
also get some equipment, you know, like
yeah.
I mean, not that you need to have lots of stuff, but you want to get some jars, and you want to get some decent jars, and sometimes you need like equipment for the kitchen, or you want to get a slow cooker, and you know, like I mean that costs also money to get this equipment. And you can get it secondhand obviously, but you want to think about what are you putting some investment into as well.
Mm. I'd love to hear you, like, I'd love to hear something. What is it like this? I'm getting like little bits, I'm getting snippets, and like I feel like I've had a great window into your excitement and your ways with food. And you made some comment at the start about how food touches everything.
Hmm.
Like, what could you give me a sniff of that everything? Like, what else does food touch other than your body and the earth that it comes from, in terms of the impact of the growing practices or things like that? What else, when you say it touches everything, what else does it touch?
Hmm. It touches the connection between people. So in my case, I experience a lot of generosity. I experience a lot of chatter, love, exchange, getting to know people's land, people's way of living. Like, so this is like me like weaving through the community with the people. If it's just me moving,
Mm,
but also if I take people with me, you know, then they're also part of this experience. And then it's like then I'm not actually dealing with the food. It's sort of a catalyst to then being with the person and making this connection and being with their land and seeing how they live and how they treated it and how they take care of the land and what they honor. And I can also take that back. You know, there's maybe times when I'm not honoring it the way that they do, or they give me a piece to acknowledge and appreciate something that I haven't picked up. And and then I guess the other step is then like the coming together around the food. And I mean, that's a very classical thing, right? Like to sit around a big table and eat food together. And there is a difference of, um, like I love, when we sit together and we speak about each dish, and every person says, and I made this and I did this, and this appreciation for the person putting in their love and their microorganisms and their creativity into that dish. And and so it's like this, like each person involved, whoever has created this, has put their own flavor, so to speak, into the dish, and then everyone gets to enjoy it. And then this pleasure that comes along then eating it. And yeah, if people are present with the eating and present in the experiments of like how that can go, rather than just shoving it down, phone on your hand, and like watching TV or I don't know what at the same time, then it becomes like this whole ecstatic experience of like, wow, I'm having all these tastes, and like, how did you do this, and how can I do this? And wow, like, yeah, it becomes this party in some ways around the food table. And it's different every single time because different people have cooked, or different foods have been found, like I said earlier. um and it's like, when I sit down, I need to remind myself. I sometimes forget myself, this really acknowledging, like having a blessing or whatever you want to call it, like an appreciation of some sort before the meal starts, to the people that created it, to the beings that have been part of, getting the food there, to the beings that have died, along the way for us to be nourished. And it creates this groundedness in the process of it. It's like I'm there with it, like I'm not somewhere else. I'm like in reality with, okay, like the food is food doesn't just come from somewhere where I'm disconnected to, and it's, I don't even want to know about it. It's like okay, like I want to use this wisely, or um I've taken so much of it now, like, with seaweed, for example. It's like, oh, I take this much and then I let the rest to be there to grow, like this. So there's a link to the resources as well. Yeah, that you're eating. It's just like a whole network somehow. Like it turns into this mycelium somehow that is communicating with each other. It's not just a one-way process.
And then what happens when you do walk into a supermarket, when you've walked out of this mycelium exploding, really cross-pollinating extravaganza, and then you're like, damn it, I need some more peppercorns or something, and you walk into the supermarket. What's that like?
Yeah, I think these days it's like I go, wow. Like it's sometimes like really like a wow, humans have been capable to do this. Like there's like yeah, like a wonder in some ways. And yeah, I also feel quite angry. I feel quite angry at the packaging, and at the aisles that get bigger and longer and wider and fuller, and the variety. Like, it's like, okay, I'm not having like a choice of one milk. I have a choice of 20 different milks or something like that. And I, yeah, I feel angry about that, because it's, I no one needs 20 different types of milks. If anything, like the supermarket could be there to just sell the local milk that gets produced and where you are, and then that's it. um I'm also angry about the disconnect. Like there is no interaction happening, and I think that used to be different. There would be the food grocer that might have been the butcher at the same time, whatnot, and it would be the place where people mingle and exchange the latest uh, news, or whatever needed to be talked about. And I don't think anyone really talks to each other these days in the supermarket, let alone to the person at the cashier. So yeah, it's a very sterile environment, and it plays this fake music to make it feel good for you. And I believe most people are really numb walking through it, and just um like the connection is just not there. It's really like a chore that is just being carried out. So when I do often try to actually consciously um make it an experience for myself that I enjoy. Like, for example, making connection with the person at the tiller, and having actually actually connecting with them, and looking at their name tag and say, hello, Susie, like, how is it going for you today? And then how is this, like, that you're working here today, and would you not rather want to be outside? I don't know what, like I asked some random questions.
Mhm.
And sometimes I just go in really fast and go out really fast again, because I tend to, avoid being in there. I don't enjoy um being in it. It's not an environment that brings thriving, and especially like the fresh vegetables or fruits that are being sold, and how I'm scared how much they might be covered in chemicals, or how much they're wilting also. Like, sometimes I'm like actually really like appalled how um what food gets sold, like that almost like some of the food actually looks dead in the supermarket and not alive, um or is moldy. So it's like there's a lack of care somehow for the foods in it, and I feel sad about that. It's kind of like it's just a factory somehow. Yeah.
Okay, so you rustle around in your bag, your kitty, and you find your magic wand, and you pull it out, and you just twirl it around, and you say the words, and what happens? Like, what if you had a magic wand? What would the food system look like? What? Well, maybe it wouldn't be a food system at all. What would food look like?
Yeah, I think the markets would come back, like, or the local square would come back, like this, whoever has something to share comes and exchanges it. Like, it would be this, and I don't even know where that would be like, it wouldn't necessarily, maybe it would be a market where people would sell if money was still a thing, but like this place where people just exchange, like, it's just an ongoing, and it's also like someone might be really good in growing potatoes, and so they grow all the potatoes and not like, you know 50 different vegetables in their garden that they have to look after, and then the potato grower would then exchange with the broccoli grower. I don't even think that in that food system that I'm taking a stand for, that would have broccoli, because I don't believe in growing broccoli, because it takes so much resources out of the earth, and I think the resources that you need, that your body needs, you can easily get out of the greens that are already growing on the ground. And then the ground can be more regenerative with some
Mm.
herb lake type situation than turning your soil to grow a garden. So in that food system, there wouldn't be gardens either. Like, there would be, the likes of syntropic forests or food forests, where the system itself supports itself, and the foods that would come out of it would be more perennials that don't need this extra input from the outside. Um, yeah, people would just go out and get all the wild animals from the hills that we have here in New Zealand, and they would just, somewhere there would be all these different butchering stations. People would be happy to do that, and the meats would be shared out. Yeah, or I don't know. Like, and I can also see, like, like this square that has this massive smoker, and everyone could come and share the smoker and bring their fish and their meats and whatever they want to smoke, and they just stand there hanging out. Rather than doing your washing at the laundromat, you smoke your fish there and have a yarn instead. And wait until it's finished. So, um, yeah, I think more like that, and more connect and more connection. Like, people would, I mean, this is, wide, but in some ways, this is not a long time ago when people didn't have freezers or fridges available. It's really like this: just take all the fridge freezer time out and go back to eating every day from what's fresh, what's out there, and preserve it in a way that it doesn't require those gadgets. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And especially, we've what was it? It was nearly a year ago now. About a year ago now, we had that big storm up there, and we were without power for over a week. And it's like moments like that are real gifts in terms of just thinking about. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a kid at school reading about the first freezers and yeah, it's just not that long ago. And the other thing that I remember from that stuff was that meat itself wasn't even really that prized. The things that were prized were the hides from animals. This is the hides and the fat, because they're the
Mhm.
things that could be preserved. You ate the meat for the few days that it was edible, and then after that you had the skins and you had the fat.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah,
the
and
real.
you would also, I mean, you would, it's like, I mean, you can see how, right? Like if you're with a family and you get a whole animal, you cannot really eat that, so you put it in the freezer. But if you live in the village or you're connected to your neighbors, then you just, "Oh, I'm killing an animal here," and everyone gets a leg.
Yeah.
You your animal is gone, you know? So like it's like this, there's such a disconnect. It's like the food system is such a representation of the disconnect between people and the satellite living systems of families and humans and in their own houses in their own places, so they have their own stuff, to protect it all and be in scarcity with it all the time. And it's not a thriving life, it's anything other than that. You might think so, because you have everything and you can store everything in it. And yet, like, I'm here in this place right now for the last 3 days by myself, and I'm preserving all these things, and I'm having this workshop happening tomorrow. And and I'm like in pain. I'm in pain of not having people around me that are enthusiastic about eating my food. Like, it's like I don't want to live like this at all. Like, it's okay to know this for this period of time, but there is no question in myself that people are meant to be living together, sharing meals together, enjoying the fruits of the labor, whatever you want to call it, together, and celebrating Gaia in that.
Mm. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I really get it now hearing you speak, just to how powerful the supermarket and the fridge freezer is at creating these, contributing to these little nuclear households.
Hmm.
Don't need each other. You know, neighbors just don't need each other.
Yeah, you don't even get the zucchini from across the fence because you can just buy
No,
it for $1 or 2.
even zucchinis. Yeah,
But that's a connection point, right? I've got a marrow. Do you want
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your love of this marrow. Yeah.
Yeah. For me lately, it's been bananas. I'm trying to every person I see, I try to give them bananas because we've been buried in bananas at the moment.
Right. Dehydrate
Mm.
them. It's hot enough where you are.
Oh yeah, God, yeah, I haven't done that yet. I do need to. Yeah, need to get into that. Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, this is cool. I'm really glad. I'm really glad to hear you speak about the stuff and see you really light up about it.
Yeah, and I think I have a sense that, one of the things that people can take with them is like just that there are easy ways to live like off the land and to live healthily, and it doesn't require much labor. And I went through all of this. Like, I kept my own bees, and I had this garden, and I grew all these things, and I had my own chickens. And I'm not saying don't have all these things, but like now knowing about other systems that are in place, how this can all work together, or also this, yeah, okay, there is probably someone next door that has chickens. I just ask them whether they can add 3 or 4 chickens to their flock, and then I give them in return these apples that are falling off my trees every year or whatnot. So there's, and then also growing perennials and um sourcing from other places. Like, it doesn't require like the time. I think the time illusion or the time myth comes with that you do it all yourself, and then you're in the survival strategy of growing food. Like, it's horror. I mean, this is really horrible. Like, when people go, "Yeah, I still gotta go and dig that garden, and I gotta water that garden, and it's like, and I can't even go on a holiday, and now I have to like do something with all these foods that I'm growing." And it's like, wow, are you enjoying actually what you're doing, or like what is the purpose of going through that? So really watching yourself also, whether it's just another strategy that keeps your your survival online rather than actually the joy of being with it, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, go away and grow. Like, there's people there that can garden for hours and they just have complete pleasure, and it doesn't really matter what they're growing. They might grow their dahlia collection, but
Mm.
um it can be really easily done with knowing some mulching techniques and some layering techniques and creating enough shade in your garden to not needing all this watering and things. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and there's so much so many traps, like fantasy world traps, available in this area, this sort of self-sufficiency, which I'm not saying you're talking about self-sufficiency, because you're talking about the total opposite of that, really. More like community sufficiency is what I'm hearing. But it's easy to pick up I don't know, a lifestyle block magazine or a permaculture magazine or something, and get this idea that, yeah, on my property I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do the bees and the garden, and there's going to be some sheep, and I'm going to milk a cow, and like I've kind of fallen into that trap a bit too, and just like fully excited about all the potentials and all of the stuff that could that I could do,
Mm.
and just and but it's totally another place to hide. It's another place just to get lost, and
Mhm.
and especially in this idea of doing it yourself and not really needing the neighbors, because I think that's really the key, is to drop into where you are physically and socially, really weave the community threads, which is what I'm really hearing from you. I'm so glad to hear
Mm.
that. And you haven't even really talked about gardening yourself. It's all about foraging and tapping into your networks.
Mm. Yeah, I want to say one thing, and then I want to say something to that, because this idea of having your own lifestyle blog is also, in my belief, like, it's a fantasy, it's a little fantasy zoo that you built for yourself to then say,
Mm,
oh yeah, I'm I'm self-sufficient, like you say, and I think it's like it comes at a huge cost for the land and also for the resources that need to go on the land, because this piece of land, most of the time, for the size it is, cannot provide the resources that you need to put back into the ground or to cycle. Like, you cannot probably move the animals in the way so that your soil can regenerate. You might have to bring in extra hay to feed your animals, and it just requires like more labor, more cost, more fuel. It's it's like it's an illusion. It's an illusion, little
mm,
harmony
mm,
world that's
mm,
being created. And for the animals, for some, it's like, if you have your one milking cow, like, they are herd animals. They don't, it's like, you don't want to have this cow standing by itself in the backyard. And I'm not saying everyone is doing that. And there is, uh yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is the illusion, like, or like to have a corner where your chickens are scratching and they're just completely destroying the soil and the ground there, and they're not moving about, they're not getting all the grubs and bugs that they might require. You feed them pellets that have been processed somewhere. you know you get what I'm talking about.
mm.
And I was going to add something to the last piece that you said. What did you say at the end? Can you remember?
No, something about doing everything, everyone, being stuck in a do-it-yourself kind of mode.
I And then you said something about me growing gardens. Yeah, I
Oh,
did that. I did that in the past. I did
yeah.
grow gardens in the past. And recently, or the last garden that I had, which is now about a year ago, I would tend to grow. So, do things like, I compost my own poo, and I'm composting whatever I can compost. And then, for example, the tomato seeds, they would just come up. So I'm not like in a nursery tending to my little plants and adding whatever I need adding to it. They just come up and then they grow. And same with the pumpkins, for example. So then I know, okay, this year I'm growing pumpkins and zucchinis and tomatoes because they're coming up. And then I would have things like yacon that just keep growing, and they're good as a prebiotic to eat. I would have berry bushes and other perennial plants that are growing, and then maybe a few potatoes as well. So really easy growing. I was more interested also in, like, with the potatoes, for example, in collecting varieties. And that's for me is important to keep varieties alive and keep them growing, but also for different tastes, like having a different experience of different potatoes. Same with garlic. So these are things that are important to me to keep the heritage alive. I That is something that I'm still interested in, and I haven't lived on a piece of land for some time now to keep cultivating that. And yeah, I'm inspired by people like Kay Baxter that do that, that are really into keeping those varieties alive, so that for all conditions or weather events, there's also then something still available. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some pretty scary statistics around the decline in genetic diversity in food crops in the
Mm-hmm.
last since World War II, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 90% plus of the food crops have disappeared from this
Yeah.
huge burst. Every region in the world, basically, every region in the world where people were living would have their own or multiple varieties of whatever their food crops were. And then that's just been slowly.
Yeah, and it's not just that, like, so it's not just the food crops, but it is also this, this loss of culture. And there's this direct link between, like, there's this fermentation book I've got from Sandor Katz, and it's like this correlation of, like, he's got these different ferments across the whole world, and he's collected all these different methods of how you can ferment. And then, you go to, like, places where they make kimchi, and then each different town does a different version of kimchi. And of course, every mama that puts her hands into the crowd is going to have a different flavor in what she's putting in there. And then with that, it's a different language, it's a different clothing style, is a different way of being, that is totally lost. And so is the culture of the food. So it's so closely linked, so yeah. Yeah, I feel sad when I say that, because, like, I experienced this, and I think I haven't even touched the surface of what it could be like, if I was to travel across the country and find all these treasures of diversity along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine even just traveling around your own country,
Mhm.
if with in the absence of supermarkets, if every town, every family even had their recipes and their varieties and their ways, like you, just the vibrancy.
Yeah, and just, it's like, I mean, like, if you, it's like this, like, you travel from town to town, and then you have your local cheeses, that they make in each town. So you go to this, like in France, well, probably not so much anymore either these days, but still, these different mountain regions that then grow that make this particular type of cheese, and yeah, cheeses, famines. Here, this is the type of meat that they make. They've developed this great biltong that you only can eat in this town because they have these spices available, or they mix it with that's not available there. And also, like, this, different regions having, yeah, the different availability. Like when I was up in the North Island, and then in Kerikeri, it was all about seafood. And so then, okay, what can I do with the fish up there? What can I do with the oysters and anything else that comes from the ocean? Because it's so much more prevalent for the people that live there to utilize the stuff from the ocean, whereas in other places it might be more meat that they consume. Yeah.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, this has been really cool. I'm really glad we got to the culture bit and
Mm,
the diversity bit, because I've sort of forgotten about that part of food
mm,
and how. And again, it comes back to the supermarket, just how much the supermarket has managed to just the influence. The influence is so much wider than just cheap food readily available, because that's what it looks like at a glance. Yeah,
mm.
there's all these other impacts sort of like heading off in all directions. And really, yeah, there's a lot more going on.
Hmm. Time to change the paradigm.
The magic wand out.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
already doing its magic. So
yeah. It sounds like it's starting tomorrow.
thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Let's stop the recording.